plans to ethnically cleanse the Christians, the Alawites, the Kurds.
And under his command, his army is actually slaughtering Christians.
How many Christians have been executed?
Gosh, there's like over 40,000 ISIS members in these camps.
They are killing lots of Christians right now.
Should we be?
So Al-Qaeda, and specifically Hamza bin Laden.
Sarah, I know you have some info on this. Right now, media is blowing up. Christians are being massacred in Syria. And so give us some insight there. How is this happening? Why it's happening? Give us what you know about the situation going on in Syria.
Sure. I'm going to have to go back in time just a little bit. So if we go back to November 2021, that is the time basically the planning started for the Syrian blitzkrieg. How it all came together actually is one of our Benghazi plotters, the one I talk about all the time, Musa bin Ali, him and Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani, the current president of Syria, were running a lot of terror line facilitation networks in Syria. They've been doing this for well over a decade. They run a really big terrorist camp in Libya, south of Misrata. And so they got together and basically decided, let's, pull in Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, let's do in Syria what happened in Afghanistan, right? So it was November of 2021 when Abu Jawlani came to Afghanistan and he sat down with Musa, Sirajuddin Haqqani, who is the Minister of Interior of Afghanistan, and Mullah Yaqub, who is the Minister of Defense of Afghanistan, right? And they came up with this plot and planning to do the Syrian blitzkrieg. So as you can imagine, Jawlani didn't have enough fighters to take all of Syria by himself. So the plan they came up with is the Taliban said, okay, we'll give you training camps in Nangarhar province, right? You can come here and safely train, because at the time, Jawlani's camps were outside of Al-Tanf military base in Syria, and they were being bombed and they couldn't safely train there. So they moved a lot of their training to Afghanistan, but it wasn't enough. So Al-Qaeda, and specifically Hamza bin Laden, said, hey, we'll train a certain number of fighters for you. What do you need? And Jawlani said, I need 10,000 fighters. So for those couple years, Al-Qaeda then trained an additional 10,000 fighters inside of Afghanistan on top of what Jawlani was sending, okay? So then they all go to Syria, and as we saw 3 years later, right, November 2024, the Syrian blitzkrieg happened and Jawlani took over. Now, when Jawlani took over, oddly, the press and the American diplomats, and we saw EU and the UN all leaned in, and they're like, oh, this is bringing democracy to Syria. Oh, he's going to have an inclusive government. Same language we heard in Afghanistan, where the intention is to make Syria just like Afghanistan, to make it an Islamic caliphate. So Jawlani plans to ethnically cleanse the Christians, the Alawites, the Kurds, etc., because that is the plan to bring in the Islamic Caliphate, just like the Taliban has been ethnically cleansing, obviously people from Panjshir, the Hazaras in Afghanistan. It's the exact same playbook, the exact same model, and a lot of the exact same people. So if we're not honest about the roots of how Jawlani took Syria, then we're not going to be able to understand what's going on. But what's going on makes perfect sense.
How many Christians have been executed?
I don't really know the number of Christians because they've also hit these Alawite neighborhoods.
What is that? What's an Alawite neighborhood?
It's just another minority in the country. We mostly know the Kurds because we fought with the Kurds, and they're going to move on, obviously, and do the Kurds. So the reporting come out of Syria, as you can imagine, is very limited, right? Because the government, like Afghanistan, is not run by terrorists, right? So we're maybe seeing 10% of the numbers. So we're hearing like in the thousands, but we just honestly don't know the number. And even all the years there was a Syrian civil war, it was so hard to get the numbers of people being killed. Like during the Syrian civil war, when Assad was basically killing his own people, he's also a bad guy, right? You don't want Assad in the country, you don't want Jawlani in the country. Over 500,000 Syrians died, right? Like we ignored all this, our press didn't put it out, and now they act like they're caring about something when these atrocities have been going on for a long time in Syria. Now it's just a terrorist doing them, right? A terrorist, though, that U.S. government now has an official relationship with. They share intelligence with him. And the U.S. Department of Defense has, for the last month, been taking out Jawlani's rivals. So we've been consolidating power for this terrorist who's now ethnically cleansing in his country.
Wow. How are they? How? Just go over the caliphate again.
Sure.
So a lot of the listeners don't understand what that is. So can you just give us a definition of that?
Yeah, sure. And I mean, I bet Legend could do a much better job of explaining like the history, but over time there's basically 5 Islamic caliphates. The last one I believe ended in like the 1940s, right, when the Ottoman Empire fell. So the terrorists want to recreate and reinvent the caliphate. The person actually leading this is Hamza bin Laden, because his father said, I don't care if it takes 100 years, right? We're going to reestablish the caliphate. Well, Hamza's like, I'm going to do it in my lifetime to honor my father. So he's been, as you can imagine, connecting with a lot of the groups, Sunni, Shia, it doesn't matter, and saying, we got to do this as a team. We have to work together. So basically, the first country in the caliphate is Iran, even though that came in a long time ago. So they view that as already in the caliphate. So now in this present generation, Afghanistan's 1, Syria's 2, and then their next move looks like, I thought it was going to be Mali, but now looks like Somalia first. So they're going to try to either get Mali or Somalia next to be the next country that falls to the terrorists and becomes a piece of this caliphate. And then over time, they want to do Iraq, Burkina Faso, Libya, right? So they have a plan over time to keep doing what they think they did in Afghanistan and what they definitely did in Syria.
Wow. So basically if I'm hearing this right, they are going through, back to just Syria, they're going through demographic group by group by group. So they haven't reached the Kurds yet.
Correct. Well, the interesting part is they tried to so the sad part is when Giuliani took over, he did kind of one of those, you got to turn your weapons in, you got to register. Sadly, a lot of the Christians and all the whites turned the weapons in, right? The West was pushing this. The Kurds are like, we're not giving up our weapons. A lot of people, even think tanks in the U.S. government is like, Kurds, turn in your weapons, be a part of this new democracy, this new inclusive government. So the Kurds luckily didn't. The Kurds are still being attacked, by the Turkish government, so it's not like there's nothing going on there. But of course, it's going to end up being some sort of larger war because the Kurds are not going to obviously give their weapons over to terrorists.
What do you think about? I mean, from my understanding, we're leaving Syria, correct? So I got a really good friend. He's a Green Beret, just served over there. Sounds like it's going to be one of the last deployments over there, and the Kurds are really. I mean, they're obviously very worried about what happens to them when we pull out. Should we be? What's your opinion? Should we be pulling out of there? Or should we stay there?
Well, I at least know when they planned the Syrian blitzkrieg, there's basically 2 key parts of it, right? So they planned it because the U.S. is about to pull out. It was even going to try to push them out faster, right? But also a part of the planning. So there are these camps in Syria, right? It's mostly known where the ISIS women and children are, but there's some fighters in them too. I think, gosh, there's like over 40,000 ISIS members in these camps. Some are children though, you know what I mean? And so that's one of the big pieces of this push. So when the U.S. leaves, we're going to hand those camps over to Giuliani and his exclusive government. And he's already made a promise, this was part of the whole deal, that they're going to release the women and children in those camps. So the real deal here is when we leave, basically it helps to reestablish ISIS, the next generation of ISIS. And even Al-Qaeda and the Taliban have offered to take 10,000 of those women and children, bring them to Afghanistan, give them sustenance, make sure the women can get remarried into jihadi families, and build that next generation of terrorists too. So this is going to be a huge win for ISIS when we leave Syria. But I do think we're going to leave Syria. I mean, it's not my choice if we leave or stay, but I'm just saying basically the tumbling effect of that's going to be a major resurgence of ISIS.
I would like to, if you let me, go back to what your first question about Syria. I don't follow Syria a lot. I'm mostly focused on Afghanistan, but it's all connected, And so what I've been hearing is that there are Taliban fighters in Syria. There are Taliban members that supported al-Jolani during his takeover of Syria just a few months ago, and that there are Taliban fighters in Syria right now, currently at the moment. So that is one. 2, the second thing I've heard is that they're killing a lot of religious minorities. and many, many Christians. They're being slaughtered on a daily basis. Al-Jolani, I'm not too familiar with him, but I've read some. And based on the intelligence that I've seen from that part of the world, Al-Jolani is a terrorist. He was a terrorist. He was a jihadi, and he's still a jihadi. The only thing is he has dropped his turban and worn a suit and a necktie. But he is still a terrorist. And so, what is really disturbing is the fact that the U.S. State Department dropped $10 million bounty on his head. And all of a sudden, the Justice Rewards Program, State Department website, completely just the page that showed the bounty on him completely disappeared in a matter of minutes. So, he was a terrorist on Monday. Monday evening, he was no longer a terrorist. Now he's a state official and he's traveling everywhere. And under his command, his army is actually slaughtering Christians. They're slaughtering Muslims and other religious minorities in Syria.
So they aren't just targeting Christians.
No, they are killing lots of Christians right now. And this is unfortunately something, unless the U.S. President Trump takes action, this is something that will continue very rapidly. Remember, Al-Jolani was a member of ISIS. You saw what ISIS did to Christians, the Christian minority community in Iraq.
What did they do?
They slaughtered them. They beheaded them. They executed them, dumped their bodies in the river. They're doing the same thing in Syria right now.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can.